Celeste is a new indie game out this week for the Nintendo Switch, PS4, Xbox One, and PC. It's a challenge-focused platformer from MattMakesGames, the same team that brought you the indie game hit Towerfall back in 2013. Avoid spikes, falling rocks, and other hazards as you make your way up a mountain and learn more about yourself and, more importantly, the inner demons hiding within. Celeste has you play as a young redheaded girl named Madeline, though you can rename her too. She's a spunky young girl who doesn't really cave when people tell her what to do. She's stubborn, but that's what makes her unique in this story, as well as gets her to climb up the mountain in the first place. The story is told through in-game cutscenes done in the same pixel art style as the gameplay. Additionally, you'll get more information on events and characters through the dialogue spoken between the characters, which is extremely well written throughout the entire game. I found myself continuing conversations with NPCs even after the few set of dialogues were over because they were that engaging. I wanted to learn more about Theo and the magical land of Seattle he came from. It's little conversations and interactions like that sold me on the characters and made them feel genuinely important rather than just non-important NPCs to the story. The story and the journey to climb up the mountain is all very symbolic of Madeline having to face her inner demons. Even if she doesn't like that part of herself and it makes her panic, it's something she has to face. It's truly a deep story that I wasn't really expecting out of a game like this, and it made the overall package much better. Celeste is incredibly simple when it comes to controls, and that's what makes this game approachable. It's simple yet tight controls. I think the same thing can be said about any other great platformer of the past like the original Super Mario Bros. Or Super Meat Boy. In Celeste, you can run, jump, climb, and dash, and that's literally it. As Madeline starts to climb up the mountain, she'll have to climb up cliffs, jump from rock to rock, and dash her way to the edges of a mountain. It's easy to get a grasp on, but it's a skill you'll have to work out and get better at over time because the game does get progressively more challenging. In fact, at the end of every stage is a death count, and the game straight up tells you it's not there to make you feel bad about how many times you've died in a stage, but rather show you how much you've overcome once you have beaten that stage. It's a good feeling of self-satisfaction after being stuck on a level for so long. The entire game is broken up into chapters, and these chapters are essentially giant maze-like levels further broken down into rooms that lead you up the mountain. If you played a Mega Man game before, you can think of each room in this game as a room in a Mega Man game. As you progress from room to room, puzzles are introduced and a save point is created. If you die in a room, you respawn at the start of that room and you have an infinite amount of lives to keep trying. At any point in the game, you can pause and hit save and quit to take a break and continue on from that room next time you start up the game. Hidden throughout each level are strawberries. They don't really do much other than improve your score, they're just really there for gloating and brag rights. If you're the type of gamer that wants to show off how well you are at the game and your achievements, then this is totally for you. However, if you just want to go through each of the levels and not have to worry about the strawberries, you can do that too. There's other hidden objects in the levels like the B-side cassette tracks that unlock a harder B-side chapter to the level you're playing right now. For those playing this game and for some reason feel like, hey, this wasn't hard enough, this is exactly for you and this is what you were looking for. These B-side tracks offer an alternate version of the stage you just played that's incredibly more difficult with a good remix song in the background. The changing environments and new puzzle elements to the terrain is what keeps this game feeling new and progressively more challenging as you get higher and higher up the mountain. At the start of the game, you'll have to avoid spikes that kill you with a single hit. It's a rather simple and straightforward premise. However, as you go higher up the mountain, the game starts to get a bit more complex in its platforming. Clouds, for example, both some that stay forever and others that disappear after a single bounce, will start to show up on stages. Blocks that move in accordance to your dash help you move across hazardous rooms, and bubbles will launch you in different directions. Despite the gameplay starting off so simple in controls and design, the design specifically got increasingly more difficult, or rather should I say challenging, but a fun type of challenge, and complex as well. It kept the game feeling fresh and really enjoyable throughout the whole time. Celeste adopts a pixel art style that looks exactly the same, if not very much alike, to Towerfall. It's lovely and charming in design and aesthetics. Despite the game being made in pixel art, the characters move on with a fluid motion and have little moments of reaction that give the characters personality and expressions, even when their face is just a colored square. Every time a dialogue is spoken, you get a more detailed portrait of the character that further adds on to their personalities, which is already pretty strong due to the well-written script I mentioned earlier. Environments are just as well designed and offer a wide color spectrum throughout the entire journey up the mountain. For example, when you start off the game, you'll be exploring the snowy terrain of the mountain, but in another half you'll be outside some cliffs that show a bright and vibrant sunset. That use of weather in the setting is one of my favorite touches in the art style. It really does give each level its own unique tone, like the feeling of cold isolation as Madeline struggles to progress through the windy, chilly night. I played the game on Xbox One X and Nintendo Switch, and despite the very big power difference, both versions look pretty much the same. Playing on the go with the Nintendo Switch, the game scales down to 720p to max out the Switch's display. Much like Towerfall before it, the game scales down pretty well on the Switch's display, and it looks pretty sharp thanks to that pixel art style. I found Celeste's music to be whimsical, which is already a pretty good sign when the game has you constantly dying in levels. The music better be good if you're going to make the player have to constantly replay sections over and over again, and luckily this game does the player right. The music is calming and it helps in situations where you're constantly dying. I found it to actually cool down my frustration at times. Just as great as the music was the sound design, like the dialogue sound effects. Celeste uses that classic N64 game design choice that you found in a lot of rare games. It has its characters make voice babbling sounds to imitate spoken word. It works really well in this game and thankfully doesn't get annoying. Instead, it actually helps carry the character's personality further because the sound, despite it not making any sense, changes pitches in accordance to what the character is saying or how it feels, like when Madeline is annoyed, happy, or sad. If you're playing this on the Nintendo Switch, there's some pretty good use of the HD rumble as well. Like if you're climbing up a cliff, you'll notice the little pitter-patter of you climbing up a mountain on the vibration of the Switch Joy-Cons or on the Pro Controller. There's also more apparent vibrations like when you dash or take damage, but the little pitter-patter of climbing up a cliff really stood out to me, and it was a nice touch. In conclusion, Celeste is a marvelous game that I had a great time playing. It presented me with an engaging story that I just wasn't expecting, with a lovable cast of characters that had deep personalities. The platforming and controls felt tight and approachable, while the chapters in the game got progressively more interesting and challenging. The MattMakesGames team did a fantastic transition from a multiplayer-focused indie game hit to this now single-player platformer. You really do have to do yourself a favor and check out Celeste. That does it for my review of Celeste on the PS4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, and PC. If you do have any questions about the game, feel free to ask me in the comment section down below, or hit me up on Twitter, Snapchat, or Instagram for a faster response. Speaking of social networks, if you'd like to follow me on social networks, I do sort of like vlog or behind the scenes stuff on there, feel free to follow me in the description down below. If you enjoy my reviews, then please consider dropping a like and subscribe. I do content on pretty much all the modern console platforms and on PC, and if you guys have a game that you want me to review in the future, just let me know ahead of its release in the comment section down below. Thank you all very much for watching, hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you all in the next one.